it. So Mary Beth, talk to me a little bit about what you do at Lowe's. Tell the people who you are.
So I'm Mary Beth, or MB, not Mary. I would get very angry at you if you call me Mary. But I work at Lowe's as the Director of Product Management. I oversee the Select organization, so the product detail page, pricing and promotional experiences, ratings and reviews experiences. I'm a busy lady. Before that, I was at GE Healthcare, overseeing their web strategy across 30 plus countries. And then prior to that, same thing at iRobot. So in theory, my scope has actually decreased, but the size of Lowe's is so big that, I oversee kind of like the Times Square of the website and the app.
Did you make that description up? Because I love that.
Someone said it, and I was like, kind of funny. Maybe not the sexiest, but I'll take it.
Very applicable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of gives everyone a visual of what's happening. So yesterday, as we were wrapping up our conversation with Albertsons, we were talking about buy-in, right? Between the merchandising team, between brand marketing, between your suppliers, right? How do you wrangle all of the merchant and stakeholder buy-in as you want to kind of launch something?
Well, first of all of my ideas are amazing, as I'm sure all of yours are too. But the thing is, everyone believes their ideas are amazing. And, one of my experiences, I had a team member, and she did have an amazing idea. She'd actually won a hackathon at Lowe's. So we knew it was a great idea, but it just wasn't getting traction. It was seen as like pebbles or sand compared to like the big rock initiatives. And then finally, I was looking at kind of like her pitch. And I was like, well, you believe you have an amazing idea, but you need to think about your audience and what do they care about? And like specifically thinking about, hey, is it visits to the site? Is it AOV? All those kind of fun acronyms. And actually tailor your story to that instead of just repeating the same story over and over again and like beating your head against the wall. And so once you start to tell that actual story and gear it towards what your audience cares about, then suddenly we had a lot more traction and we were able to get like dedicated resources for that idea. And it came to life and it was amazing, and you can see it on the site. It's shot by room, so a nice kind of like inspiration to installation experience on the site and something different than normally what we do. So it was just so important to think about what do they care about instead of what I care about, even though what I care about is, of course, very important.
I do this with my husband all the time, make him believe it was his idea.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the things that can get done when that happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so how are you guys thinking about the inspiration aspect, right? Because people now, they're going to retailers not just to find the widget A, the widget B that they want, but they're going to get inspired, right? They want to figure out, how do I design my bathroom, or what does my kitchen look like? So what does that shop by room look like for you guys? Where did that kind of come from?
It's interesting because I didn't realize Lowe's even sold like furniture or decor. So I was like, oh, okay. We sell everything and we want to be that total home destination. But part of that is, if you were to search bathroom decor ideas and you were to find Lowe's, you'd end up on like a how-to article with a bunch of links that would send you to like one of those terrible list pages with 9,000 ideas where you're like, I thought I was going to get to this really beautiful bathroom, but instead I ended up on like a list page with like, I don't know, a toilet paper roll holder or something very not cute.
A tiny thumbnail.
Yeah. And so you're like, I was led astray. With Shop by Room, it was interesting because we actually had all these great marketing images, and it was a way to start to, let customers shop a room, because I think of myself as a little bit artsy, but not in the decor way. And so it was really helpful for them to see that and then be able to shop it in one click versus having to like go to those terrible list pages with 9,000 items.
And I have to think most people approach home ownership or home renovations that way. It's like, okay, I have a bathroom I need to fix.
Right.
Let me figure out what to do with the bathroom. Not, I would really like a new toilet paper holder. That's not where I start.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. We have a lot of DIY, like do-it-yourself or do-it-for-me customers, and you can think about, whether it's a renovation or, we're doing some work on like fencing and decking, and I was like, well, people build their own decks. I hope to never do that, but if you are going to do that, you want to make it a really approachable project. Yeah. And how do you help someone, walk them through that idea in the Times Square of the site and make it a little bit easier for them if they are going to build their own deck?
So I imagine you get ideas all over the place, right? People come to you and you're like, Mary Beth, I had a great idea for the website. So some of them are great, right? But what tips do you have for just prioritizing all the things that people want to do? The work's never going to end. You probably have a roadmap longer than our sponsor list.
Oh my gosh. Well, I like to say we're never bored. I'm sure many of you feel that way too, so that's good. But with ideas, it's hard because everyone is thinking like, hey, the most important person in the company thinks that this idea is great, that sort of thing. But really, at the end of the day, I think part of it is no one realizes how busy you are. So you really have to build that visibility and transparency into what your team's working on so that it's clear that Times Square is not a one-store wonder. It's something where we're doing a lot of work, so having that visibility of all the things that we're working on, but also thinking about it's not just revenue impact of an initiative, it's also UX or design effort, engineering effort, whether we actually believe it's going to be a success. So just helping people like walk through that too. And then the other piece of like what makes our work interesting and not just like checklist people, which I try to avoid at all costs, is you might have an idea and it's not necessarily that you particularly love that idea. It's like, what are you trying to do? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? And then I can work back from that to say, okay, maybe it would take 5 years to do Erin's idea, but actually there's an easier way to, make shopping for lamps simpler or something like that. So again, it's helping to steer you to take it as like, Erin's probably not going to be super mad if I don't do her exact idea. She's trying to help me and make a suggestion. How can I make maybe a better suggestion?
So you kind of work in the sense of getting to the business problem in the first standpoint, right? Before
Exactly.
is like, hey, Mary Beth, build me a lamp widget, right? You're like, well, why do you need that lamp widget? What's it going to be able to do?
Yes, and that's really like where the magic is and where I find more satisfaction in the work, because I have team members that are like, well, so-and-so told me to do this and I had to do this. And I'm like, well, this job is going to be really terrible if that's the way that you go through it, because it's just like a checklist and you're just like a short order cook.
Yeah.
I want to be a gourmet Michelin star chef, okay? So that's what I want for the team.
Crushing the analogies this
I
morning.
love an analogy,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of coffee, so.
So, we do want to believe most of our stakeholders have some nuggets of good ideas, right? Like,
They
hey,
do, they
this
do.
may not be exactly what you want to do, but I found something in here that can work. Not everyone has a good idea. So how do you say no politely? Respectfully?
It's in the backlog. No. Thank
We
you,
got
Kevin.
one
Thank
laugh
you,
from
Kevin.
Kevin.
He knows. I think that it's always interesting and it's a balance, and that's what makes it kind of an art of like the velvet no. So it's a little bit like, hey, this is what you're trying to do, or again, walking them through the thinking. Because if you walk them through a little bit of the thinking of like, hey, it's going to take 5 years to do this thing, you don't have a business case, then they're going to run back and they're going to be like, I did a business case and it's $60 million. And it's like, no. You don't just get to make up numbers or add zeros. So just, again, walking them through the other things that we're doing, I think just being very clear. I feel like proactive communication is like the superpower of any job, of just like setting expectations to say like, hey, these are the 5 other things that we're working on this quarter. Your other magical idea, I think we're going to get on into next quarter, and then just continue
And then
from
next
there.
quarter.
Yeah.
And the next quarter.
Infinite.
Yeah. The proactive communication, it came up all the time in Albertsons yesterday, right? Of like, how do both of those teams coordinate together? Like, how often do you communicate out your roadmap or your backlog? Because I think there's a disconnect of, I've been working on this for a year, but some of your maybe brand marketers or merchants are like, this hasn't been done in 3 weeks. What are they doing over there?
Exactly. Well, I like to say modesty is overrated. So you really need to make sure that everyone else knows the amazing work that you're doing. And also, it's hard. Anyone else that's at a big company, there's just endless amounts of people, and so you think that you're communicating, and you find another team that you've never heard of, and they're like, oh, I didn't know you were doing that. So, just trying to proactively communicate, but also to think about, oftentimes, like, we're not going to necessarily, problems happen. I just assume that something's going to go wrong because it's digital. So there's always a bug or a delay in a launch or something like that. The secret sauce is really the proactive communication to say like, hey, because of resource constraints or because we found this, here's what we're going to do, or we're looking into this issue. That's the part that I like to tell my team so that they worry less about, when things go wrong. Well, if things go wrong, when they go wrong.
Yeah. So then do you have, is the backlog completely open for anyone to look at, or do you give them enough to see, or do you kind of own that communication out? Because, I've created so many Jira boards and no one actually goes to them, right? They would love the information, and I'm like, you have never even logged in.
It is so funny, like, you think, oh, I'm going to send you a link. No one's even going to click on your link. I literally will have to copy and paste into an email body to make it a little bit easier, reduce any friction for stakeholders. I love visibility and transparency because I think of it more as I want to build your trust. I don't want you to think that I'm off in a corner just doing Mary Beth's great ideas, trademark. And, the more that I share with you, the easier it is for you to understand why something that you're asking for might take, a quarter or two to achieve. Yeah. But if you have extra resources for me, great. I'd love to have those.
Yeah, I can get anything done if you give me more resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Real fast. So let's move into kind of the personalization aspect of digital, right? And Lowe's is so interesting because you have so many different category groups and you have so many different personas, right? Between the do-it-yourself, the do-it-for-me, the pro, right? The consumer who thinks they're a pro, all of these people. So how do you kind of try to tailor your experiences when you're working with such a big, diverse crowd?
It is interesting because it is so someone buying a fridge, it's sort of a little bit more like Doug's mattress analogy of 8 to 10 years versus a hammer. You're just okay, I just want to go buy a hammer. And thinking about the kind of information that I need to provide someone for that really considered purchase versus, again, a hammer is so different. And so we've been looking at, how might we adjust the way that the information is displayed accordingly, just to make a little more sense because it is so varied. Yeah. And there's a lot of information on the pages, but it makes sense when you're buying something like a fridge where hopefully you're not going to buy it again. You want to understand the specs, and so sometimes we're working on adjusting product specifications, which at the time you're that's really not sexy, but actually is very helpful because recently I needed to buy. My microwave died, and I thought it was a normal microwave, but it's a freak microwave. And it apparently has the strangest dimensions on Earth. And so suddenly I'm looking at the site, and I'm oh, this is actually very helpful that I can see the specs because this is the narrowest, widest microwave on Earth, and I'll never be able to replace it. So that was helpful. But thinking about, that's a very different journey for someone. How can I adjust the experience for them to make it easy for them to feel confident in their purchase, add to cart, but also get the information that they need and want.
Well, and sometimes, especially working in home improvement, the information that they need and want isn't the sexiest information, right? But having a filter that will say, oh, I need these dimensions on my microwave, that's going to help my overall click to purchase. It's going to help my conversion rate and probably help on the return aspect for you guys, right? So it's how do you prioritize those non-sexy things when someone's I need a big splashy page about kitchens?
Right, no, it's interesting. Last year we did a lot of work on specs and then product variants, which are, instead of just having the stainless steel fridge, you could get a black fridge, you could get a fingerprintless, I don't know, that sounds weird, fridge, but that kind of thing where, again, it doesn't sound necessarily sexy and exciting, but it's very helpful for customers. How do you make it clear with fewer clicks what kinds of information that they need as far as price and the size of it and everything like that? So those were things where, again, it's not just a one and done activity too, it's an iteration. And so I love doing A/B testing and just seeing okay, did that improve? Did that change anything? But then not stopping there with those very important parts of the site experience too.
Do you think something can be too personalized?
Yes. I feel sometimes personalization, I think it's always interesting because some people, when they're doing the research, they want to say, like, do you want things personalized? And it's like, people either react very warmly to that or they're horrified. But it's not really about, like, do I want things personalized? It's, hey, would it be helpful for you if, we recommended plants that worked well in your geographical area? That sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Creepy things with my name in them sound bad. And so
Your fern is dying. Buy it right now.
like, uh-oh. So yeah, I think personalization, while in theory, sometimes, people want to get to like one-to-one and they're like marybeth.lowes.com. Like, no, that's a little too much. Let's find ways to make it helpful for customers. And it's less about kind of the way that you do it. Again, it's about what I can do to make your shopping easier. That's helping you to get to the kinds of categories that you're interested in, maybe understanding the kind of style of your home, suggesting rooms that are, a good fit for that style. That's helpful for me.
Yeah.
It's not creepy.
Well, and it's efficient and it's scalable for you as the marketer on the other side, right? Everyone says one-to-one is a Narnia, but I don't think that's even effective or scalable at this point.
It's almost too much, and it's like there are other things to do in your backlog. So thinking about, personalization that makes sense, that isn't a little bit too much, and it can easily become too much, and then you look at the results and you're like, I spent X amount of dollars on this and I didn't see the return. And I sort of feel like that's kind of across the industry for like digital. Personalization was so big for a while, and it's just not, it's not this magical thing where, again, if I write your name on a bunch of like search bars that you're suddenly gonna buy from me. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. So as we think about you mentioned you have a lot of content, right? Especially when you're making a huge purchase like a refrigerator that you're only gonna do 10 years, you want it once, you need the right sizes, the right specs, is it gonna fit? Like, what's the importance of ratings and reviews in that purchase funnel for y'all?
I was talking to someone during this event, and I will not buy anything. Like, if I do go in a store, and I'm obviously someone that's partial to online shopping because I'm in the right job. If I do go in a store, I will sit there and look at my phone and make sure that there are good ratings for it. I love to hear about other people's experience, whether it's a considered purchase like a fridge or not. Like, it's just nice to have that information from other shoppers about their experience, especially, star rating is important, but then you read more of the details, because sometimes people have like a 1-star review, but they're like, well, the delivery was bad. Well, okay, that's not, I'm sorry, Bob. But it's not really that the fridge was necessarily bad. And then also seeing images in other people's houses are helpful, because then you can start to picture that too. So we do a lot of work on how can we make it easier for you to click through the images on the pages? Make it not so many clicks to get the information you need to buy.
So sometimes it's not just the review or the text itself, right? It's like how they used it almost, like taking a book in the apparel aspect.
It helps people to picture it in their house and to contextualize the item.
Are PDPs the only place rating and reviews can exist, or are there other areas within the purchase funnel on the site that we can incorporate user-generated content?
So higher funnel, it's a little bit more like dating, I'm going to say. I love an analogy, Erin. And so you're just maybe flashing up like a star rating or something like that. The PDP is where you're starting to get serious, to find the relationship. And you're starting to say like, hey, here are the pictures, here are, more of the actual review content that helps you decide whether a product's right.
Value has been a kind of underlying theme that we've talked a lot about here. Everyone, again, is price conscious. I think that's going to be around to stay for a while. So what are some ways that we can communicate value, like, without the over-discounting aspect of it?
Exactly. I mean, soon, you never want it to be that your site or your app is like a used car lot or anything. And so I think of value as more of like a spectrum, and it goes from the concrete to the abstract. And so the concrete is like price, just making sure that it's really clear what the price is for something. No one should need a calculator when they're on your site or app to understand how much they're going to pay, which can be actually really challenging with different pricing policies. The next part, though, is like purchase confidence, which is saying, hey, is this item going to arrive on time for me? Am I going to be able to pick it up on store? Those kinds of more about like the overall purchase, less about the item. And then finally, there's that kind of like why Lowe's, or like in particular your retailer, and like what value sets you apart. And that's more about like a lifetime value that needs to marinate. You need to let people know that over time, because it's not an instant gratification metric. It's something that, you know, when I think about different retailers, I think about Nordstrom and how they have price match. They have free shipping on everything. It's just, they have great customer service. And so that's kind of that why Nordstrom. But for any retailer, it's the piece that sets you apart. You want that shopper for life. And that's part of the values that you bring to them. Yeah. So for us, it's letting people know about our loyalty programs, which we talked a lot about yesterday, price match guarantee, all that great stuff that makes you different and makes someone trust you and identify with you as their retailer of choice.
Well, and convenience is a huge point of value, right? I mean, I think we heard it from Lori and Wayfair yesterday, and she's like, oh, I loved it just because it was convenient for the return aspect of it, right? Yes. I think about with Lowe's, and if you can offer me curbside where someone's gonna bring out the product so I don't have to lug my 2.5-year-old out of the car, like
anything to not open a car seat.
I'll pay $5 extra, just take it, that's great. So as you guys think about that, like, is that showing up across the whole purchase funnel, or are there particular places on the site that you've found it's easier and better to communicate price as a value versus benefits as a value?
I think it really depends through the site journey, and then also going back to the different kinds of categories and varieties that we have, where like for something like a dishwasher, it really depends. You know, I'm not going to pick that up in store, but I want to make sure that I'm going to get that delivered to my house, and I'm going to get it delivered on time, because oftentimes that's a duress shopper who's like, I need a dishwasher now, versus something like, you know, a hammer, or I don't know, bricks or something. There's all sorts of things on our site.
Mulch.
Mulch. You're like, please bring that out to me so that I don't need to unbuckle 2 kids out of their car seats. Yeah. But it's thinking about, again, the right information for a shopper, because it's not one size fits all peanut butter spread for us, because it's such a varied site and experience.
And it's so varied across, you know, you have the in-store experience, right? That you're getting the product expertise, but to your point, you're shopping online sometimes while you're in the store, before you got to the store, months before you got to the store. So there's an element of, as the marketer, how are you thinking about just consistency of information between both your digital business and your in-store footprint?
It's been interesting, especially on like pricing and promotional experiences. We want to make sure that what we're communicating digitally matches up to what you're seeing in store. You don't need any further confusion with that. And, you know, I always admire the store associates, because they do things that I personally cannot do. I worked in retail in high school. I can't. And so I'm thankful for them. But it's just really important, because our stores are a huge, huge, huge part of our shopping journey. You know, they're always going to be there, and they're so important, because it's like an expertise that I'll never have. And when you're buying something like that, it's so reassuring to have someone that knows what they're doing when you're going to go build your own deck. So, you know, just very important to have that, but to balance it, and to assume that, you know, especially younger generations, when they are going in the store, they're like, I don't want to ask where that aisle is. So I want to make it really clear on the PDP where you can find that fridge or that dishwasher, so that you can talk to someone if you want to, but you don't have to.
Yeah. Oh, that's key for the younger generations. So one more question before we move into audience Q&A. What's next in digital retail? Like, what are you most excited about as kind of we enter 2024 and beyond?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I mean, I feel like I'm not going to say AI, because everyone says AI. I think, again, it's just adjusting these experiences for your shopper. While stores are certainly never going to go away, I don't think digital is either. And, you know, people's expectations are, again, it's kind of like thinking about shifting to TikTok or something like that, hopefully, where I just want things to be really easy for me. I want it to be friction-free. And so anything that I'm doing, even if it's just a small change on the site, should be making that shopping easier for someone, no matter what. Like, it's really about the customer at the end of the day, and giving them that information as easily as possible, so that they can feel good about their purchase.
Is there anything you're excited to just like never talk about again? You're like, if I could not talk about this topic again in digital retail, stricken from us, what would that be?
I think a lot of the personalization stuff.
Ooh, hot takes.
I know. Again, I think if used wisely, but I just oftentimes it turns into something where it's not used wisely, and you're not going to see the return. So I think of it as like thoughtful personalization is good, creepy personalization or over personalization is bad. It's just not a good use of time and effort.
Yeah. Love that. Questions from the group. There were more than 6 people here this morning. You did good. Yeah. You drew a crowd.
This is the VIP session, Erin.
Oh, way back here. Hot take. Hang on. It's got to be
Twice as fast. Twice as fast.
Twice as fast. It's got to be a hot take if I'm going this fast.
Jared Scott from Spark Foundry. One question for you is, as you're making PDP changes or changes to the site, what's your process or what type of considerations do you look at when thinking, how is this going to impact media and the ad experience as well?
So we do partner with our marketing friends, and you want to think about it as a holistic journey too. So whatever media messages are out there, you want to make sure that they have like parallel familial messages on the site. So we do have recurring conversations with those folks just to make sure that it's aligned. You don't want someone to get to the PDP and think it was like a phishing scam or like, I saw this ad and now you're telling me something else. So it should make sense and just be part of that holistic journey. So again, the customer feels like this made sense. This is not a scam. But otherwise, we're very good at making sure that the brand language stays consistent, the look and feel stays consistent. And so even if we are experimenting with the layout of the PDP, you still have that overall design system, and then just the overall brand, so that, again, even if there are changes to the information or the layout, it never feels like it's not Lowe's.
Oh, we shamed
like
them into one more. Yes.
I was about to call on somebody.
So as a stakeholder that's been, Justine from PetSmart, as a stakeholder that's been told it's in the backlog a lot, do you have different teams or dedicated resources for like big bets, big projects, and then run the business low lift to just be able to get work done?
I wish I did. I want to work there. I would say one of the things that I feel like some teams don't do, and when you find someone like this, you want to like hold on to them forever, is maybe just say to them like, hey, my item's in the backlog. Is there a different way of going about that you might recommend? Because like I love, some of my favorite engineers are people where, hey, if I ask you for a hamburger and you're like, I don't have a hamburger, I want someone that's like, I have a turkey burger. Okay, great, I was just hungry, that's all. And so you need to say like, hey, help me understand why it's in the backlog. Is there some kind of information that's missing? Is there a different way that you might think about doing this? Because while hopefully the people that you're working with are thinking about things strategically, sometimes they're just tired and they're like, I don't like that idea. But if you help them to understand like what you're trying to achieve, and then maybe say like, is there a reason why it's lower on the list? You might get something better than you did before.
We could do a whole day session on just your analogies.
We could.
We're going to do that.
Awesome. Mary Beth, thank you so much. I couldn't